George Bernard Shaw was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1856. By the time he was a young man, he was already writing literary critiques for music and theatre. Shaw wrote several novels and then turned to playwriting and essays. George Bernard Shaw became a monumental literary and political figure, writing over 50 plays. He was also an influential writer for the Fabian Society, an organisation committed to social reform. In 1925, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature and later an Academy Award for his adapted screenplay of The Script for Pygmalion. George Bernard Shaw's works were thought-provoking and encouraged the questioning of societal norms in the interest of greater justice for all. As he once said, "Some see things as they are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not?" Shaw applied the same questioning to himself, and he changed to a vegetarian diet after realizing the suffering caused to animals by eating meat. Shaw's noble actions were highlighted by Supreme Master Ching Hai during an interview with the Irish Dog Journal in 2009.
And people are not aware because nearly all of this inhumane treatment of animals takes place behind windowless walls where no one can see. We're not even allowed to see it, yes? So the renowned Irish playwright and Nobel laureate George Bernard Shaw has said, "I do not want to make my stomach a graveyard of dead animals." You see, the ones who are aware, they don't touch meat, yes. Just like when we are aware, we switch completely.
Today, we are going to present to you Art Teaching from A Treatise on Parents and Children, a collection of essays about various topics between children and parents. Although written 100 years ago, many of the concepts he illustrated are still relevant in modern society. Art Teaching. By art teaching, I hasten to say that I do not mean giving children lessons in freehand drawing and perspective. I am simply calling attention to the fact that fine art is the only teacher except torture. I have already pointed out that nobody, except under threat of torture, can read a school book. The reason is that a school book is not a work of art. Similarly, you cannot listen to a lesson or a sermon unless the teacher or the preacher is an artist. You cannot read the Bible if you have no sense of literary art. To read a dull book, to listen to a tedious play or prosy sermon or lecture, to stare at uninteresting pictures or ugly buildings, nothing short of disease is more dreadful than this. The violence done to our souls by it leaves injuries and produces subtle maladies which have never been properly studied by psychopathologists. We acquire a truly frightful power of enduring boredom. We even acquire the notion that fine art is lascivious and destructive to the character. We sit solemnly listening to bores and twaddlers because from the time we could walk or speak, we have been snubbed, scolded, bullied, beaten, and imprisoned whenever we dare to resent being bored or twaddled at, or to express our natural impatience and derision of bores and twaddlers. And when a man arises with a soul of sufficient native strength to break the bonds of this inculcated reverence, and to expose and deride and tweak the noses of our humbugs and panjandrums, like Voltaire or Dickens, we are shocked and scandalised, even when we cannot help laughing. Worse, we dread and persecute those who can see and declare the truth because their sincerity and insight reflects on our delusion and blindness. We are all like Nell Gwyn's footman, who defended Nell's reputation with his fists, not because he believed her to be what he called an honest woman, but because he objected to being scorned as the footman of one who was no better than she should be. Fortunately, there are arts that cannot be cut off from the people by bad performances. We can read books for ourselves, and we can play a good deal of fine music for ourselves with the help of a pianola. Nothing stands between us and the actual handwork of the great masters of painting except distance. And modern photographic methods of reproduction are in some cases quiet and in many nearly as effective in conveying the artist's message as a modern edition of Shakespeare's plays is in conveying the message that first existed in his handwriting. The reproduction of great feats of musical execution is already on the way. The phonograph, for all its wheezing and snarling and braying, is steadily improving in its manners. And what with this improvement on the one hand, and on the other that blessed selective faculty which enables us to ignore a good deal of disagreeable noise if there is a thread of music in the middle of it, few critics of the phonograph seem to be conscious of the very considerable mechanical noise set up by choirs and orchestras, we have at last reached a point at which, for example, a person living in an English village where the church music is the only music, and that music is made by a few well-intentioned ladies with the help of a harmonium, can hear masses by Palestrina very passably executed, and can thereby be led to the discovery that Jackson and F and hymns ancient and modern are not perhaps the last word of beauty and propriety in the praise of God. In short, there is a vast body of art now within the reach of everybody. The difficulty is that this art, which alone can educate us in grace of body and soul, and which alone can make the history of the past live for us or the hope of the future shine for us, which is the appointed vehicle of inspiration and the method of the communion of saints, is actually branded as sinful among us because wherever it arises, there is resistance to tyranny, breaking of fetters, and the breath of freedom. Gentle viewers, thank you for your company today on Words of Wisdom.